I hear so many people talk about how great the 90s were, how great the 80s were. Now, given I wasn't around in the 80s, so I don't know. I was around in the 90s, and yes, the 90s was pretty awesome, in my opinion. However, there's a lot of people that really get caught up in it and just say that everything that comes out today for kids, or everything that comes out today in general, is garbage. And I have to say this. And I know so many other people have said this, but it's actually a legitimate argument. What about your older brothers and sisters that grew up in the 80s or the late 80s? And they didn't think the stuff you watched in the 90s was crap? They probably thought the same thing. Same thing with people who grew up in the 70s or people who grew up in the 60s. It just goes on and on and on. It's like how people in the 50s thought rock and roll was the devil's music. It's the same thing. So this argument that everything was better and that it's a fact that things were better back then, well, for one, you're whoring yourself out to nostalgia. Now, I agree about one thing. Disney, to me, was a lot better in the 90s because they actually put more effort into their movies and stuff. But now they just rely on Pixar and some stuff like that, and some live-action comedies they come out with. They're like C-ish every once in a while. So I can kind of agree with that. But this argument that just because something came out in the 90s and you had a good childhood memory with it, that all of a sudden means it's better. It's kind of like with people who keep just praising and putting the 90s Power Rangers on a pedestal and treating it like it is the greatest thing since sliced bread and that nothing can ever come against it. And that doesn't just go with the 90s Power Rangers. I mean, like, Power Rangers, like, from people who keep fanning about how great the MMPR was or how great the Zordon era was, and they just keep going on and on and on and on about it. And this does tie in because the Zordon era was 90s. It pretty much was. And they just keep talking about how everything that came after it was shit, or how everything kids watch today is shit. Well, for one, you're not a kid anymore. These things that are coming out for kids now aren't going to appeal to you. So you need to stop with this whole nostalgia horn of, oh, it's not what I grew up with, therefore it's garbage. It's like people who are still fanning over seasons 1 and 2 of Digimon. And trash everything after that. Or I'm going to go out on a limb and say Digimon seasons 1 through 4, and then they bash season 5 and 6 of Digimon. Or Digimon Sabers and Cross Wars. They keep just hammering them with hate. Why? Because Tai's not in it. Because Agumon's not in it. And I'll go on a limb and say because Takato and Takuya aren't in it. So these people just need to stop with this whole nostalgia whoring of, oh, because I was a kid then, it was a fact that it was better. Now, there are some arguments, like with Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. Well, Nickelodeon, it's kind of a gray area with me. Disney, and, etc. There are some exceptions to this rule. Disney did put a lot more effort into their material. So did Cartoon Network. They played a lot better programming than they do now. But yeah, I think the general sense of you're just going to like something because your nostalgia is telling you to is stupid. And this goes for the Saban era fans. People who keep ranting about how horrible Disney was and how great MMPR to Time Force was. Now, I agree. I still don't like the Saban era too, but it's also for nostalgia. But I don't think Disney did that bad. I mean, I watched some of SPD last night. Now, given I'm not a huge fan of SPD, but you gotta admit, the acting is somewhat better in the Disney seasons. I think that about Dino Thunder. The acting is a hell of a lot better than it was in MMPR. But if you're just going to go on this nostalgia horror fan rage of how, oh, it's garbage because it's not MMPR, I get no respect for you. And that goes with anything. It's not just Power Rangers. If you're just going on a nostalgia horror fan rage of any sequel incarnation or just anything in general, I have no respect for you because you're not really thinking logically or rationally as a person. You're just going off on your little nostalgia fan rage. So yeah. Now the 90s do have a special place in my heart, but that doesn't mean I'm going to say that everything out from 2000 on up, even though it was like what, 8 years old in 2000? Or anything that, from like 2003 up is garbage. Because it really isn't. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. So, rate, comment, subscribe. Leave a video response down below on your opinions of nostalgia whores, why you think that they have rational arguments, or why you agree or disagree with them. And that's pretty much it. This is Gunner 4. God bless, and I'll see you guys later.